Hello, Ian here, and welcome back to Dark Sun Rising. Today we'll be completing the Tyranid warrior that we've been working on. We'll be finishing the bone sword, completing the base, so that we can soon, with the hints, tips and the techniques that we've been learning, get our army painted and out onto that battlefield. Hope I've been inspiring you, but today we need to finish the miniature that we're on, so let's get over to the painting table. Well, welcome over to the table. By the magic of teleportation, we are here. And just as a reminder, this is where we're up to. So as you can see, bone swords are still blank and base is still blank. Let's get cracked on and get them done. Right, so colours. We're going to go for brown sand Vallejo colour as our base. We're also going to get some Pro Acryl. Where on earth have we played here? Pro Acryl Dark Ivory. And we're going to work up to that. And then final highlights will be in Bright Ivory. And we will also be using some Garagax Sewer from Citadel as a bit of contrast on there. And there will also be a little bit of Volupus Pink and a little bit of True Blood by Green Stuff. So a bit of a mixture of everybody's paints. Let's get the base coat on first. And as ever, we always add a little bit of black. And that's just Vallejo Standard Black. And the same brushes we've been using all the way along, we'll just give that a bit of a wipe. Tiny little bit of black, base coat in. So sand brown and black. And we're literally just going to paint all the sword. No messing around. Try and leave, there's some tiny little holes towards the hand. So what we'll do is get most of the paint off onto the sword itself, so that we're getting drier and drier, so that when we get back to doing the little holes, as we flick across, they get left in relief. Because there's not an awful lot of paint on the brush to overwhelm the hole and end up going in it and recessed. And we'll do the other side as well. And we're just gently stroking over the bone handle, trying to leave, again, similar to the holes at the base of the sword, trying to leave some natural recesses. Doesn't matter too much at this stage if we do cover some of them up, because with having the black in there, it actually is going to act as a bit of a base coat, where it's going to act as shadow for us. So just whacking this bit on nice and quick. And then what I will do is I'll paint one side of the sword, and then I'll get on and do the rest, and then come back and show you the finished result. So we'll just get all these base coats on first. Mix it. Ooh, that's a bit too dark. Come over this side, try and get away from the black. And as we said in the last video, this is one of the reasons why some people decide to paint weapons and things separately, because it can be a little hard to access once you've actually got the model put together. But I don't tend to mind, to be honest. Yeah, it makes things a little more awkward, but it sort of gives you an idea automatically of where all the natural shadow should be, and you can get away almost with murder because you can just ignore certain parts and just put initial coats on and just say that they're shadow. Not that I would tell the whole world that I was up to those sort of mischievous shenanigans. Oh, I just did. Oh no, too late now. Okay. So that's all of our base coats on. Just making sure we've cut all edges of the blade. Missed the front edge of the blade there. Okay. Right. So our first proper coat now will come onto the brown, but we'll also mix in some of the dark ivory. So a little bit of the brown, dark ivory, get those two mixed together, and that's going to cover most of the sword. We found too much on the brush there, let's get some off. And then we're just going to come down the sword. And just provide a rough first coat. So that's our initial first two layers down. I'm now going to swap to the dark ivory on its own. Okay. Come down the edges. And we're just going to start to be just a little bit more careful now. What I want to do is I want to create a shadow down the middle of the blade in a moment. So I'm going to stay a little bit away from there and leave some of the natural darkness in. Don't forget we're working in dark ivory yet, and we've still got to come a shade lighter still. So I'm going to come down the whole length of the bone and try and get towards the end quite a opaque colour on. Then to the bottom half of the blade, and again quite an opaque colour on. So we are looking, and we'll just go over the handle, just quick light brush over the handle. And just down this thorn at the side here. Get rid of, I did a little bit of an over enthusiastic blob there, so just getting rid of that. There we go. Right, so this bit here I want to darken up. So we'll go over to the Garagax Sewer. Now Garagax Sewer is a really dark colour, so you will need to lighten it up a little bit. So we'll pop some water in there. Just take a little bit off the palette. Gently stroke that in where I'm wanting my shading doing. Okay. Might just, wrong colour. Might just go a little bit darker down the centre there. And then bring it in around the hand and give it some natural shading. bit of shadow. Okay. And then we'll go back to the ivory. And we'll give it another coat of the ivory and just tidy up what we've done. And a little bit of a wash. I've put quite a bit of water on the brush so I can spread the paint around a little bit. Now we'll do the top of the blade. Just put the brush a little bit wet for doing this technique, and we could do with it being a bit drier if we're going to do hash lines across. And then at the end, I'm going to go quite solid again. Underneath, I'm quite happy with where the hash lines are underneath already, so we'll leave that at that. And then we'll get some pale ivory. And mix that with a bit of the dark ivory. And we'll go back to the dark ivory, and then we'll just transition the two. Okay, that's quite a nice blend. On the bottom edge of the blade, we're going to redo the dark ivory. Just because it's more downward facing. At the moment it probably doesn't look like there's a great deal of difference between the two, but the upper surface is slightly brighter. And then I'm going back into the ivory and I'm going to pick out the edges of the blade gently. And then we'll go back to the dark ivory and then just blend in the edges. Across the two. And then we'll come to the top of the blade and we'll reinstigate the ivory again. Okay. I'm just going to run it down the top of the blade here where there's a ridge. and then get the dark ivory and blend that edge back in. And then we'll get our shadow tone again and just reintroduce our shadow tone. And we'll grab our dark ivory again. And we'll water it down quite a bit. And then we'll pick up the Garagax once more. And run it into it while it's still wet. And then we'll get a bit of dark ivory and bright ivory, mix them together. And then where the holes are, they're probably still a little bit wet for doing this really. Probably ought to leave it to dry and work our way around the model. But we're here now. Just going to touch on the very bottom edges of each hole. And then we're going to get some of the blood because I want my weapons to be exuding the same vitriol that's going on elsewhere from these holes. I'll just dab it all the way along and let the holes do the work for me because it'll sink into the holes all the way along. And then let's wipe off some of this excess. And then I'm going to do some little dribble lines coming down from the holes. Not long, just tiny. And that's just to really emphasise the blade is part of him, it's alive as well. I'm going to re-emphasise the bright ivory at the top. Hasn't come off quite as bright as I would like. Okay, that's starting to get a bit more of the effect. I'm going to put a little bit more on the bottom edge here as well. There. Okay. It's still looking a bit harsher lined for me, and I think I'm going to work it in with, try and make it look a bit more natural by working it into the shapes here. So let's just tiny little bits. And pull them and blend them into the existing pattern of the sword. touch up and brighten things back up around where I don't want it. Okay, well, that's not looking too bad. Right, we'll brighten up the back of the sword as well. Bit of bright ivory to go on there. Just wipe a bit off on the towel because this is such a strong colour. Okay, so I'm quite happy with that. I think I'll maybe just touch up a little bit. Well, it's maybe just a little bit strong an edge there. Might have to get a little bit more of Garrigax because it's. I think I've overwatered it. So that's the Garrigax again. Let's be brave and test it straight on, but I'm sure it's going to be too potent. Right, that's certainly given me a bit more to play with and blend in. So we'll go back to the ivory. This is the darker of the ivories. And we'll run that all the way down. We'll get the two colours to cross, we'll get them to blend in. And make things a bit more subtle. And then we'll go back to the bright ivory and try and re-establish our dominance with the bright ivory again. We can move the colours around into each other. There we go, that's better. And then we will go back over the blood because the blood is meant to be on top after all. And I think that looks a lot better. So I'll now compare that to our original sword. And the one thing we haven't done is put any blood on the back of the hilt, so we'll just quick do that. So, a little bit of brown. Grab the blood and just where the dots are, run it out of the dots again. Okay, I'll do that for the rest of the swords and then we can get on with the base. So I'll catch you soon. And this is what the final result looks like. So home stretch now, basing next. Okay, we're now moving on to basing. So first colour up is Rhinox Hide. And we're going to need a little bit of kitchen tissue for this. And a brush that's fine enough to get into the base. And poke around without catching the model, but also that has a little bit of a wide edge so that we can actually get some paint laid down over a decent area. So the Rhinox hide is just going to, anything that's not a rock is going to get a little Rhinox hide on it. So we work our way around the rocks, just liberally blobbing on the Rhinox. Trying to make sure we don't catch any of the model. Doesn't matter if we go over the edge of the base at this point, just as long as we don't catch the model, that's the important thing. And try and get a good layer on, because this, you don't want it to look like there's too much black showing. So, and you can even get a bit of water on, which will actually, it takes longer to dry, but it will take it into the base and make it distribute better. So here we go, you can see what I'm doing here. And it is just literally just dabbing away. So I'm going to get rid of all this brown, and I'll be back in a second. Okay, so what's brown is meant to be brown, and now to pick out all the rocks, and for the rocks I'm going to choose London Grey. There we go. And it's not quite as dark as I would like, so of course, a bit of standard black. There we go. And then that is going on any rocks. So there we go, there's a little rock there. Try and get a decent bit of coverage. So I'll work my way around the rocks, then back in a second again. Okay, so we've painted the stonework London Grey, and now comes the easy work. I've prepared some paints already. You need a little bit of paper towel, and then it is literally, this is just light grey. So we're going to get that, and we're going to just stripe that across the rocks, trying to hit from the front of the base towards the back so that you're creating some natural light. And any stones that you decided to paint, you strike them. At the back here I've already started a little bit on these, mainly because I got them out of focus. We then go to our next grey down, and just on the borders we'll just add a little bit of extra just towards the camera. So that's those done, and then we'll go to, I think I did have sky grey as well, but I'm going to miss sky grey out and just go straight to white. And just a tiny tapping of the white on the near side edges. And that's that. And then we'll go back to the mud. So I think the Rhinox hide should have had a chance to dry now. So I'm now going to go over to Mournfang Brown, Citadel paint. Give that a shake. Get a lump of that. And again, dry brushing this time. And just across. And if you've overstruck any of your stones, this is where you can hide that with your Mournfang. So you're just going to go around the base. Tidying up a little bit. Getting in all your little nooks and crannies. And getting rid of any oversplash from your previous colour. Okay, that's that. And then on to the next layer, which is going to be Zandri Dust on this occasion. Not very well mixed. There's plenty of colour there, so we'll use that, because it's only dry brushing anyway. Obviously I haven't used Andrew Dust in a little while. And that will just pop the very highlights of the ground. I'm just going to get a bit of pale sand in there and mix those two together. It's not really coming quite as bright as I wanted it, so we'll just get a bit of the two together and just see if that makes a bit more of a difference. There we go. That's really pulling the base together now. Now, because the earth would naturally shift over the stones, you can afford to have a little bit of overrun onto your stones with some of the colour. Not too much. It just gives a... And you could leave it at that if you wanted, but I'm not going to. I'm going to add a little bit more of an accent colour. There is a little bit of debris on there from when we put the terrarium, whatever it was, in there. Lizard base garbage. So there are one or two little plants that you could pick out. So you can go over your bits of plant life with a bit of dark green, pick those out, just adds a little bit more interest. Even if you hit stuff that isn't plants, doesn't matter too much. And then we need just to accent it and make it stand out on the base, or else it was pointless on putting a colour on. So I'll go to the light green. Still got quite a bit of dark on my brush, so we'll get rid of that. Light green. Lots of colour on. Take all the water out of the brush. Leave it nice and dry. And then we'll just touch on top of where the plant life is. Don't necessarily have to do these colours, you can use woods and straw colours, but the idea is just to put a little bit of contrast on your base. And then the next step, if you want to go for la pièce de résistance, if we tidy the paints all up before we knock them all over and move the wet palette out of the way, then Gamer's Grass are my heroes. And they do lots and lots of base coverage. So what I'm going to do to start with is I'm going to get some big stuff out, and we'll get a little bit of dry bracken, ever so easy to make. You've got over there, so bend them up and then just curl them over your fingers. And also bend them at the edges. Sort of the shape that bracken would be in real life. And it should stay fairly well placed once you've actually done with it. Okay, so that's bent. And then to hold it in place, bit of Gorilla Glue. I'm going to put just a little dab in the middle. Right. I should have prepared that earlier. With Gorilla Glue, what you need to do is actually put it downhill so that the glue runs to the end. Bad prep on my part, so we'll go to a full back. We're going to use some Loctite super glue because this will actually do as it's told. And we'll just put a dab of that in the middle without trying to stick it to my fingers. And the idea is that once I get those up and in place, they will stick. So let's place it. Where should we have it? I think, looking at the miniature, I think maybe here at the front of the creature, between the legs. Get some fine tweezers. And then just move the fern under the miniature carefully into place. Checking where you blobbed your glue. And then you can always pop another blob of glue on to seal it, because once we varnish it, that'll take away the shine of the glue. Okay, so that's that in place. Just conform it to the shape we wanted it. Okay. So that's looking okay. And then literally we'll grab a few bits of grass. And we'll have one out in the open. We'll have one over here by the rock. And one down between his legs out of the way. Another one here down at the edge of the base. And we'll actually join a couple together. And then we'll have another little bit of change of colour. I'll just pop a few of these on. Don't like where that one is, get rid of that one. That's better. And that's the base looking a lot nicer. Certainly more jungle-ified. One last thing to do, let's just clear these out of the way. I'll tidy those up afterwards. And we get our... I've just buried my brush. There we go. We get the black. Pull that back in shot. Get the black. And we will just go around the bed base very carefully on a piece of tissue. And just take the edge of the base back to tidy. And that, believe it or not, finally is the end of this tutorial. I'll just finish off tidying them up, don't want to leave on a, and we'll show you the whole thing completed. Don't want to get halfway through a base and finish prematurely, that would be a disaster. Okay. So, come on camera, one last chance to focus properly. It's doing it on purpose. Come on. There we go. So yeah, one completed miniature. Just need to leave that to dry and then varnish. Remembering last time I did all the armour plates in gloss and everything else went matte, so do the matte first and then touch everything else that I want in gloss afterwards. Please, at this point, this is the last time I'm going to ask you to be patient. Leave this model 24 hours before you touch it with gloss, because gloss will often reactivate some of the colours, you'll cause seepage in the colours, and then you'll trash all the work you've just done. So just be patient, give it 24 hours, let everything go off properly, and then you can get your miniature gloss, and then at least a couple of hours between matte and gloss varnish, and just to be a little bit patient. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed these tutorials. Well, as they say in the film industry, that's a wrap, and concludes the first of my Army Builder series. Hopefully many more to come. If you've enjoyed, learned things, got new hints and tips, then please do like and subscribe. And hopefully I'll see you in the next video. But, as ever, there's always one thing that we say here at Darkstorm Rising. Are we painting minis yet? Hell yeah! Catch you soon.